episode of Top of the Morning is brought to you by Edward Jones financial advisor Kelly Harmon, providing you with well-researched guidance backed by Edward Jones' extensive team and technology that help you prepare for retirement, children's education, or other financial goals. Call 252-473-1006 or visit the link on the screen.
Just because you're black doesn't mean you have to vote Democrat. This year, in order to see benefits for our communities, we need to vote outside the box. Find out more by visiting us at tuconservative.com. This season of the Urban Conservative Podcast is brought to you by Newton for Senate, working to improve education, reduce taxes, and keep North Carolina #1 for business. Find out more at newtonforsenate.com.
This episode of the Urban Conservative has also been sponsored by Case Technology Consulting. Help your business get value out of its data and become more efficient and streamlined. Case Technology Consulting. Check out the link in the description. Ladies and gentlemen, top of the morning to you. You are checking out Top of the Morning, the best 30-minute morning show on the planet. I'm your host, Abdul Ali. Thank you so much for supporting us here at the Urban Conservative. As always, if you haven't done so already, make sure you jump over to tuconservative.com. Get yourself a membership. That Hamilton plan is only $10. We know that Joe Biden got everything else, including eggs, through the roof, but we still only got a $10 plan. That gives you access to the news feed, the wonderfully curated news feed, our blog, and you get to join the community of growing conservatives in urban areas who are helping us spread conservatism into the urban areas of our country. You can also go sponsor an episode. If you like to do that, you can sponsor an episode so you can get your commercial up here. Big shouts out to State Senator Paul Newton and everybody else that supports the platform. And you can also grab yourself one of the mugs or t-shirts or something like that so we can keep the dice rolling when we're doing that little thing we be doing. Wednesday, March the 1st, 2023, ladies and gentlemen, it is an amazing, amazing day. We're doing something normally we don't do on the morning show. You know, if we have guests on the morning show, it's got to be serious business. It's got to be exclusive. It's got to be serious, super serious. And this morning, ladies and gentlemen, do we have a guest for you? We are going to be joined by a mover and a shaker in North Carolina politics. And I am going to just say this. A lot of folks, when I told them this brother was coming on the show, were very excited. Dan is the immediate past chairman of the Union County GOP. He serves on the Union County, the state, North Carolina GOP, and the 9th District Executive Committee. In addition, he is the chairman of the Hornets Nest Republican Club and the vice chair of the NCGOP Plan of Organization Committee. Now, I'm going to reserve my mugshot until this brother comes on, but without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, y'all please welcome to Top of the Morning our good friend Dan Barry. Dan, welcome to Top of the Morning, sir. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm going to let you record that intro so I can use it everywhere I go.
All right, fantastic. Super. So look, I told you before the show we do a mugshot thing. Let's get your mugshot. What you mugshotting with today? What's on your?
I don't know what side you want, but we'll put that side up first. There you go, Carolina. It's the Carolina Panthers.
All right, fantastic.
There it goes. There it is.
What's in that cup this morning? What you sipping on?
I'm drinking a little French roast.
So in honor of Dan coming on the show, I broke out my superhero mug. Because you're a political superhero to many. So I busted out the Marvel mug in honor of Dan Barry today. So Dan, you have been involved in politics for a while, multi-generationally, as I've heard. And, I'm going to jump right into this. We have in 2024 coming up a very important governor's race here in North Carolina. There's already one. Josh Stein has already announced his candidacy for governor, and then there's a presumptive other candidate that's supposed to be announcing. How does this go in North Carolina? Do we have a North Carolina primary for governor on the Republican side? What does that look like to you?
Well, thanks. And thanks for having me on, Adul. And I think it's important, just as a caveat, if we're going to talk some politics here, that we make sure that you understand that I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm not endorsing party candidates. I'm not endorsing candidates for public office at this point, for sure. I think on the Democratic side, we see exactly what's going to happen. There is some rumor that Beasley may enter that race, and that would be extraordinary. On the Republican side, you've got, right this minute, 3 or 4 people that are serious. Of course, you got to consider Mark Robinson, lieutenant governor, running for governor. Word on the street is that Dale Folwell will run, right? If we could blend those 2 people together, we would have the ideal candidate. I mean, you got just wicked financial brains in the treasurer and the best Republican stump speaker, bar none, in the country in Mark Robinson. It's going to be an extraordinary fall.
So if we had a Mark Folwell son or a Dale Folwell, we'd be in okay shape.
Both these guys are good friends of mine. I've been, as you mentioned, multi-generational. I've been real involved for 30 years. And vibrant primaries sharpen steel and prepare candidates for the general election. I'm all for primaries. I don't, these guys that roll through with no primary and then they hit a general election and sometimes they hit a brick wall.
Right. So
it's important. It's going to be really interesting to see how both of these individuals who come out of the hard right side of the Republican Party move left just enough to build coalitions with independent voters and with urban voters to push them over the goal line. Because in North Carolina, we're a purple state. And anybody that doesn't believe that doesn't understand that it takes independent voters voting for Republicans for us to win. And so we've got to figure out how to do that and do it quickly. We don't have a lot of time on our side.
So you just touched on something in relation to this governor's race, and then this. I've heard folks in our party say this on both sides. We're no such thing. We're not a purple state, and others folks say we're a purple state. Are we by definition purple? I mean, just based on the numbers alone, if we were to take how we feel out of the equation, just based on the fact that we're outnumbered by Democrats and unaffiliated voters, by virtue of that, makes us a purple state. No.
Well, I don't like putting people in boxes. Right.
Okay.
You and I are friends. We've known each other for 6 or 7 years. It is a media classification of our state because of the mixture of not the registered voters, those who actually go to the polls and vote. Right. Big difference. If you look at a congressional district, 750,000 people in that district, but only, let's say 400,000 are registered vote and only 200,000 actually go and vote, right? So you got to look at that. And yet the congressperson represents the entire district. In North Carolina, it's intriguing as we've seen this shift from the Republican and the Democratic Party into this new unaffiliated population. Some of that is and I'll mess up these terms, Gen X, Y, and Z, right? The new young phenomenon that don't like to be tied to a group, that don't want a title, that don't want to be said, I'm Gen Z or I'm a Republican. I'm an American, I'm a voter, and I'm going to vote for what's best from my perspective. Right. And then we got to figure out how to brand and message, and that's a whole nother subject.
So before we go to break, I think you touched on something. I know we in North Carolina, we're kind of closing that registered voter gap with the Democrats, at least. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do to catch up to unaffiliateds, but we're closing that voter gap with the Democrats, with them electing a new 25-year-old young lady to run their party. Do you believe that gives us an opportunity to kind of close that gap even more? Because I doubt very seriously this young lady, she's going to be able to pull off the job that she needs to. But is that a help to us or a hurt to us that they've put that young lady in there?
I think it is neither. It's an indictment of the old style Democratic Party
Mm,
in the state of North Carolina. What we've seen is a hard shift from my generation of more conservative Southern Democrats
hmm
to a closer reflection of the national liberal agenda embodied by this new group of young Democrats that have taken over the state of North Carolina in Democratic Party.
All right, so y'all don't go nowhere. We're going to take a very quick commercial break here on Top of the Morning. We're kicking it with our good friend Dan Barry. We're going to talk about presidential stuff after the break. Y'all don't go nowhere. Get a cup of coffee and come right back to enjoy Top of the Morning.
Just because you're black doesn't mean you have to vote Democrat. This year, in order to see benefits for our communities, we need to vote outside the box. Find out more by visiting us at tuconservative.com.
Welcome back to Top of the Morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are checking out the best 30-minute morning show on the planet. I'm your host, Adul Ali. I'm joined by my good friend, Dan Barry. We are talking all things politics this morning. I am just proud to have you on the show. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a minute, and got to give a big shout out to all our friends in Moore County. I got a couple of good mornings from Moore County, so shouts out to y'all, and I will see you at your convention on Saturday. Looking forward to being with you all there. Now, Dan, you touched on the national Democrat scene. Now, I'm just Joe Schmo living in Charlotte, don't know too much about politics, right? And I hear and I know, all the noise on the right about Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and all of that. But what's not often being talked about in the media is the Democratic side of the aisle. Okay, I know that there was a couple of people have already announced on the Republican side that they're running. What does this look like on the Democrat side? And does Roy Cooper throw his hat in the ring to become the president? Is that a thing?
I am not a conspiracy theorist,
Okay.
right? So I'm not going to draw a crazy picture out here, but there has been I'm trying to remember the right phrase. It's like a bad secret that, they're looking for a Southern Democrat to rise to the occasion. He is not an old man, right? I mean, Roy Cooper is not an old man. He is a shrewd politician, and I'm saying this from the Democrats' perspective, not mine,
Sure.
who has been an executive branch in a Republican-controlled legislature. Think about this, and a Republican-controlled court. Sounds kind of like what the president of the United States is like right now.
Right.
So it is an interesting thought process as to what happens. The Democrats are in a quandary. They have a significant leadership challenge as they start to approach the general election. And does the vice president stay on the ticket? Does Biden stay on the ticket? All appearances are he is not a healthy person. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see the soul searching that occurs in the National Democratic Party as they begin to look at who their leaders are. Not unlike the Republicans, who are going to have a wide open, vibrant presidential primary. You mentioned it, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, President Trump coming out again. Mike Pence is probably going to run. Mike Pompeo is probably going to run. Nikki Haley has announced that she is going to run. We could have 6 or 8 legitimate candidates. I believe on the Republican side, that field will narrow very, very quickly and coalesce around 1 or 2, and then one individual will obviously kind of leap forward as we move through primary season, and the undercard is running for vice president.
Right on. So in something you mentioned with this national crisis, identity crisis, Democrats are going to have to figure it out. And to your point about Cooper having to deal with Republican legislatures, doesn't that position him well to be able to say, hey, look, I got all of this done? And doesn't he get to take credit for all the work that the North Carolina General Assembly has done? Like, he could get up there and be like, I lowered taxes and I did this and I did. I mean, he could technically say that, right?
He can say that he led the state of North Carolina through a pandemic with the legislature on his back. He's got to sell the Democrats first. And we all know who is directly responsible for the economic recovery in this state and the $12 billion swing in the state's balance sheet. And it wasn't the Democrats. It was Republican leadership, starting when Thom Tillis was Speaker of the House. You know, people forget that Thom Tillis really went out and recruited great Republicans to run for the North Carolina General Assembly and helped them get elected in 2012 when we took over the majority and started the process of lowering taxes to increase revenues by stimulating economic growth. And it has paid off extraordinarily well with massive reductions in North Carolina debt and rainy day funds. And, you know, we had last time I calculated, it was 10 billion, maybe 12 billion. I'll have to double check on that number, but we had a ton of debt and now we have no debt and we have a lot of cash and we're paying off long-term bond debt. And that's, you know, that is extraordinary when many states are upside down.
Wow.
Now, Cooper didn't have anything to do with that. The General Assembly did that with Cooper on his back.
Right.
And vetoing budgets. The North Carolina Republicans gave teachers a pay raise.
Correct.
The North Carolina Democrats furloughed teachers. And we're not talking about that. And we need to get back to the fundamentals that say to your audience, right? In urban cores, in the big cities, wait a minute. The Democrats weren't doing us any favors. It was the Republicans that came in and stimulated the economy, creating more jobs, elevating wages, changing your human condition for you and your family and putting you in a better position. It wasn't the Democrats doing that. The Democrats were saying, we're the government. We're going to take care of you. We're going to make life easy on you.
And that doesn't work.
I'm sorry. You got me on a soapbox.
No, that's perfectly good. I want people to hear that, especially the folks in these urban centers, you know, in the Charlottes, the Raleighs, the Durhams. I want, you know, our listeners to understand that that's what the left does. They coddle you. They give you everything that you think you want, things that you think you need. And then for that, they just usurp power. Well, you touched on something, and I want to kind of go back to this a little bit before we go to our next break. So Roy Cooper decides to run for president, right? And I've heard Raphael Warnock on the Democrat side would make a good presidential candidate. That's just what I've heard. You know, I could see his ego pushing him to do that. But what does that look like? Roy Cooper announces for president. Who in God's green earth do they partner with Roy Cooper for a presidential run as a vice president?
A liberal. Now, and that's hard to define when Roy is the conservative, right? So they would have to go to his left. They would have to go environmental, and they would have to go out west or up north. So you're talking about a New York or California, far left environmentalist, probably very young, governor of California.
You just that's a good one. I didn't. Wow. Okay.
But the problem with that is his ego is bigger than Roy Cooper. So does he really want to be the undercard?
Nah, that's woo. Yeah.
I don't see that. So
I don't see that either. Ladies and gentlemen, you are kicking it here on Top of the Morning. We're kicking it with Dan Barry, former chairman of the Union County GOP, current vice chairman of the NC GOP's Plan of Organization Committee. We're going to talk a little bit about Congress and some stuff you've got coming up right after this commercial break. Y'all don't go nowhere. We'll be right back here on Top of the Morning.
Episode of Top of the Morning is brought to you by Edward Jones financial advisor Kelly Harmon, providing you with well-researched guidance backed by Edward Jones' extensive team and technology that help you prepare for retirement, children's education, or other financial goals. Call 252-473-1006 or visit the link on the screen. Just because you're black doesn't mean you have to vote Democrat. This year, in order to see benefits for our communities, we need to vote outside the box. Find out more by visiting us at tuconservative.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are kicking it here on Top of the Morning. I'm your host, Abdul Ali. This coming Friday, ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to miss this. 5 p.m. this coming Friday, March the 3rd. We're going to have Brian Blaze Gibbs on the show. I always get tongue twisted. I just call it Brother Glaze. But you do not want to miss this. If you know who this brother is, if you don't know who this brother is, you do not want to miss this interview. This is going down Friday the 3rd at 5 p.m. We're going to be talking about the criminal justice system, what criminal justice reform actually looks like, this brother's experience coming up through the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s, his time in prison and what that did and how he changed his life around and all that good stuff. So again, Friday the 3rd, right here on the Urban Conservative, we're going to be kicking it with Brian Glaze Gibbs. Right now, we're kicking it with the homeboy Dan Barry, North Carolina politics extraordinaire. We're talking now, we're going to kind of shift a little bit. We watched at the beginning of this Congress, Dan, a very interesting happening in the vote for speaker. I think, what was that? That wasn't the most votes forever for speaker, but that was a lot.
No, it after the Civil War, it won 100 votes in the early
thank goodness.
20th century.
Yeah, that CNN would have exploded. CNN, if that would 100 votes, oh my gosh. But there were 20 or so congressmen who stood the line. And in a lot of people's eyes, a lot of what happened in D.C. needed to change. The rules needed to change. How things happened in D.C. needed to change. What, in your opinion, is going to be the long-lasting effects of people like our good friend Dan Bishop, who took a stand, other folks like Chip Roy that took a stand, Matt Gaetz and those folks? What is the long-lasting impact throughout this Congress of those folks doing what they did? And what does that really even mean, what they did in holding up those speaker votes?
So you're going to laugh at me. There's a political side of this, which we're going to talk about. There's also an institutional side of this.
Okay.
Right? There are institutionalists. Those are the people that believe in the sanctity of the body.
Sure.
And then there are people that believe in the individuals that make up the body. The two most intriguing things that came out of this is that the broad base of American citizens that were paying attention got a lesson in Civics 101. The clerk of the U.S. House came out of that in flying colors, and she is to be congratulated for managing through a very challenging process that hadn't been done in 50 years or longer. The second piece is C-SPAN. We complain about C-SPAN all the time. It's a public information. We spend money on it. It allowed us to watch the sausage getting made.
Right.
And so that we could hear Chip Roy give the best speech on the floor of the U.S. House I have heard in a decade. We could hear members of Congress materially influencing the outcome rather than speaking to themselves in an empty chamber. And that occurred because roughly 20 members of the Republican caucus said, stop. That's the role of conservatives, to say, stop. Let's think through this. I am a budget hawk. We are spending money that we cannot afford to spend. We are financing ourselves off of the back of China. We will become an enslaved state to China if we don't fix that. Chip Roy, Dan Bishop, Ralph Norman, all three, two of whom are close to us. Ralph Norman is 10 miles one direction. Dan Bishop is 2 miles one direction. Patrick McHenry is right up the road. When you start to look at who was involved in creating the new rules package, which allowed members of our caucus to actually debate finance bills, tax bills, true legislation, those individuals that were involved in that, look at this. North Carolina, Dan Bishop, Richard Hudson.
Right on.
Arm wrestle. Patrick McHenry.
Right on.
Ralph Norman. 4 of those 20 are right here.
Right.
And then you have Chip Roy. from Texas, who I think was the key negotiator with Patrick McHenry from North Carolina to create that new rules package. And we're fortunate to have Chip Roy coming into Charlotte with Dan Bishop and Ralph Norman to speak the end of next week, 2 weeks from now. It's going to be fantastic.
So we're going to plug that event here in a second, but I got a question. Knowing that those folks did what they did, those roughly 20 members of Congress did what they did, and those rules and those things obviously got the institution closer to, as much as we can push it back to what the founders envisioned that body to be. How does that, on the backs of that type of institutional work, how does the average Republican help the party now that those institutional changes have been there? What does the average rank and file Republican do at this point to back that play, as it were?
Well, when you and I talked yesterday, and I don't think it's any secret, you have 3 Republicans parties. You have the grassroots, the folks that are out there day in and day out getting it done. You have the donor class, and you have elected officials. And the real question is, if you are if you've ever written a check to the party, ever written a check to the candidate, ever attended an event, you're in the donor class. We don't like to think of it, because if you only wrote a $20 check, you don't think you're a big donor. Oh no, you are part of the GOP establishment, and you are in the donor class.
Oh no, I'm establishment now.
You, my friend, are as establishment as they get.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
All right.
So I'm calling it out. I'm calling it like it is.
Okay. I'll wear it.
If you've been to a GOP event, if you're a precinct chairman, county chairman, district chairman, serve on it, you're establishment. And we laugh when you're outside of that group, because we like to throw rocks and mud and say, oh, I'm anti-establishment. Y'all are broken. I got to fix it. And then you get there, and what happens? Your establishment. And your job is to do what? Protect yourself, protect my power. What power does a district chair have? None. They get to take pretty pictures with members of Congress. But in the reality, in the party, we go to war over this stuff this time of year in the odd years. And the reality is, where did we end up? We got great leadership in the GOP. Chairman Whatley picked up the ball when the party was not destitute, but financially in a tough spot.
Right.
There was a massive leadership vacuum. He's done 2 terms as the state chair. And if you compare the party structure today to the party structure 4 or 5 years ago, no one can honestly look at that and say he did a bad job. We're in a bad place. There are counties that aren't functioning. Absolutely. There's some districts that don't function. But the reality is he's done a pretty good job. Would you or I, or maybe some others, done some things differently? Without question. That's what makes us Republicans. We don't always agree on everything. Right. I would have embraced more of the grassroots than he has. I would have tried to broaden the tent and not have so narrow of people influencing the strategy and what we were trying to do. But that's his style, and he's sitting in the chair. So he runs with it. I think we have a unique opportunity this year from the party base, right? Looking at county conventions, district and state conventions that are coming up, to say, do we have the right people in the right seats to be successful in 2024, which is going to be an extraordinary election year in North Carolina as we look at presidential and gubernatorial races, and then setting us up for the 2026 U.S. Senate race. So, when I look at the wide array of the party right now, sure, I'm frustrated district conventions, and this is granular stuff your audience doesn't care about, but got punted out until next year, whenever the chairman calls it. But the reality is, we got an election to win.
Right.
And we need to quit taking shots at each other and start taking the shots at the Democrats. We need to quit weaponizing our processes and our plans to attack each other and start focusing on the real adversary, which is crazy radical wokeism that is imbued in the Democratic Party. And guess what, Abdul? They're coming after you, and they're coming after me, and they're coming after your primary audience.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the brother Dan Barry mention this. This event is going to be going down. You do not want to miss this at all. He's got our good friend Dan Bishop coming into town. This is the Hornets Nest Republican Men's Club Congressional Update with Chip Roy and Dan Bishop. It's going down Thursday, March 16th from 6 p.m. to the Levine Senior Center. If you want to get tickets to that, please visit our page, The Urban Conservative, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or look up the Hornets Nest Republican Men's Club so that you can get yourself hooked up and have, I already told you, Dan, I just want to shake Chip Roy's hand. I watched the video last night. That dude's full of fire, bro. He's absolutely full of fire. So
it's like I said, he gave the best speech on the floor of the House I've heard in a long time.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, if you are in the Charlotte surrounding area, Union, Gaston surrounding area, tickets are going fast. I know I already got mine, but please visit the Hornets Nest Republican Men's Club. Come hear a congressional update with Chip Roy and our good friend Dan Bishop. I happen to be Dan Bishop's county chairman right now, so super plug for Dan Bishop. But please support the Hornets Nest Republican Men's Club. We're looking forward to being a part of that event. You'll see some pictures from us on the Urban Conservative when we get there. Dan, I got to tell you, man, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. If people want to keep up with you and all the things you've got going on, how do they do that?
Well, I hadn't updated my website in a while, but it's Right Course, RIGHT Course with Dan Barry. I've got a blog and a podcast out there. I will hit the recording studio again here shortly as we move into election season. Of course, on Facebook, social media, Twitter, that's a great way to find me.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've been kicking it with our good friend Dan Barry here on Top of the Morning. My name is Abdul Ali. I got to give a big thank you to all of our sponsors and underwriters as always. A big shout out to my twin brother, Raheem Architect Soda, for holding down production in the background. As always, we hope you have a powerful, positive, and productive day. We'll catch y'all tomorrow morning right here on the Urban Conservative for Top of the Morning. Y'all have a good day and we'll holla. Peace.
This season of the Urban Conservative Podcast is brought to you by Newton for Senate, working to improve education, reduce taxes, and keep North Carolina #1 for business. Find out more at newtonforsenate.com.
This episode of the Urban Conservative has also been sponsored by Case Technology Consulting. Help your business get value out of its data and become more efficient and streamlined. Case Technology Consulting. Check out the link in the description.